Namaste. My heartfelt gratitude to all of you for being here. The prayer from the prayers and meditations of the Mother that we will take up today was written by the Mother on April 20, 1914. She's already arrived in Pondicherry, met Sri Aurobindo. And the prayer is a very profound prayer which reveals the right attitude one must take during difficult periods that come in the course of sadhana or in the path of yoga. When people take to yoga, there is often an assumption. Rather, they have an impression that yoga is a process that keeps ascending continuously and it keeps moving in somewhat a straight line, in a continuous ascension, as if we are walking on a staircase, we are taking one step, we rise, another step, we rise, another step, we rise, and this ascension continues, experience after experience. But this is not so. The movement of ascension is actually not straight. In fact, it is a kind of a spiral, or one can say it's a circular type of a movement, opening outward. There is one part that opens and attaches itself with an intense aspiration. And then there are other parts which are closed, because we have so many parts in us. One opens, but the others are closed. There are some which are yet getting ready to open, and still some parts which resist and pull you down. Some may even oppose the climb and obstruct, and some of the parts in us are very obstinate, recalcitrant parts which protest vehemently and they refuse to change, come what may. So beyond a certain point, the ascension, this upward movement cannot take place till the other parts also become ready. So the consciousness fluctuates between the part which is open. When there is a beautiful experience, there is an upward movement, we feel it very concretely, and those parts, so the fluctuation is between the part which is open and those parts towards which we have to return. There is a working that needs to go on in them, in those parts, and when they start opening, or when they start showing readiness to change, then again we ascend. And very interestingly, the next ascension that happens, which is a step higher than the previous ascension. Usually we ascend, we climb a step, there is an opening, and the other parts, they pull us down. And when there is an opening or a readiness to change in those parts, we again ascend. But now this ascension is a step higher than the previous ascension. And we cannot go beyond a certain point only because we are being pulled down by the parts which are refusing to change. And until they also give the sanction or their readiness to change, the next higher level of ascension cannot take place. But when the next ascension happens, it is always a higher level. The same thing, if you can see it in the spiral of evolution that takes place, the Chatur Yuga. The Sat Yuga is there, the Treta, Dwapar, and then the Kali. So we see this similar kind of evolution, or the cycle of evolution, after completing one full cycle of Satyug, Treta, Dwapar, Kali Yuga. When the next Satyug comes, it is always a step higher than the previous Satyug. And this is the real ascension. It is a concrete ascension that takes place. And in each age or in each yug, a special part, a specific part is often worked out. For example, in Satyug, it is the spiritual aspect, it is very prominent. And in Treta, it is the intellectual aspect. In Dwapar, it is the heroic, or the, one can say, the vital element that is very active. And in Kali Yuga, it is the physical element that dominates. But every time some work goes into the cycle, there is an ascension. Even we talk of Pralaya. Even in Pralaya, everything is not destroyed. The essence of the cycle that evolution has taken place is carried on forward for a greater rise. It is not the same cycle that will remain there. It will move on to the next level in the spiral, and it is going to be a higher rise. Now, similar thing also happens life to life. And in yoga, the action is actually fast forward. It is a very concentrated form of evolution that can take place. Then the process is the same. Opening, we step back or we are pulled down, then those parts open, and then the rise, and it is a further higher rise. Very often, I'm sure all of us have undergone this, very often when there is a tremendous aspiration, we will see very soon some part which is very weak in us actually pulls us down, and we often say and lament, oh, after such a beautiful experience, why did we lose it? Actually, we have not lost it. It has actually gone into the background. And it is also a reminder that even those parts in us, they want to participate in the yoga of transformation. Sri Aurobindo has said that this path is like a sea, vast sea. There will be, often the waves will be very calm, but often there will also be turbulent. And unexpectedness in situations, in the way we react, or certain things happen which we are actually not prepared for, or we had not even foreseen them. And, well, one can be prepared, have all sorts of preparations, and the path of yoga is not a clear-cut straight path. And there is no, especially in integral yoga, there is no set pattern or there is no set path that, okay, this is the method, you take this step, then go to the next step, and there is a process or there is a very clear-cut defined method. One will face unexpectedness, unusual situations, which will pull us down. But if we look at it very intently, we will find that life and unexpectedness, they actually go together. And to be prepared for the unexpectedness is perhaps the best preparation, one can say. Even soldiers, they are trained. I mean, they have so much of intense training. But when they are actually on the battlefield, of course, the training helps them. But the situations they face may be so starkly different. So, and how they react is their own inner preparedness that is helping them. So everybody has to go through this in life, these ups and downs in sadhana. And here, in this prayer of April 20, 1914, the mother is narrating an experience. She has had an exceptional state. She has met Sri Aurobindo. She has also experienced the silence of the mind completely. But here, when the prayer talks of that when you lose an exceptional state that you have attained, what is the right attitude to be in? What is the way that we should look forward to then? Of course, the ups and downs will be there. But one has to also remember that the path of yoga is almost like a wave motion. There are these heights and then there are these abysses. So one has to reclaim the heights as well as the, you can say, the troughs or the abysses. But if we look carefully, amid all this highs and lows, the path is actually one directional and it is always in the forward direction. So between the ups and downs, life proceeds, the sadhana proceeds, but if we take the right attitude, we will see that this fast forward motion or this fast forward evolution, which is yoga, will proceed very fast, and it is always, whatever happens in life, always is moving us in only one direction, that is Godward way, the divine way. Let us read the prayer. April 20, 1914. After having hoped so much, after having believed that my outer being was at last to become an instrument adapted to thy purpose, after feeling hopeful that I will be at last delivered from this obscure and cumbersome self, I feel I am as far from the goal as before, as ignorant, as egoistic as I was before this great expectation. And the path stretches out once again, interminable across the fields of inconscience. The sublime door has closed again, and I find myself still on the threshold of the sanctuary without being able to enter within. But I have learnt to look at everything with a smile and a tranquil heart. I ask only this of thee, O my divine Master, not to let me make any mistakes, even if the instrument is still condemned for a time to unconsciousness. Grant that it may let itself be guided faithfully and docilely by thy divine law. I bow to thee, O Lord, with a deep and pure devotion. O, be the sovereign master of all hearts. So, there are these long periods when the yoga is going beautifully. The mother, when she arrived in Pondicherry, she had attained, she was at the height of her spiritual achievements. Talk about Kundalini, talk about chakras, talk about occult, talk about so many things she had achieved. Talk about the yoga of the Gita, which she had internalized. And when she meets Sri Aurobindo, a tremendous thing happened, that she also experienced a complete silence of the mind. Now, the mother in the human form and Sri Aurobindo, both of them, they underwent these periods of intense aspiration, rise, and to heights that we cannot even imagine. We cross a certain step and we are so elated and we want to share. Oh, I did meditation for 2 hours and I felt such a deep calm and all. Imagine the mother and Sri Aurobindo at the height. Even they had to undergo this. And one of the disciples had once asked the mother, "Mother, why did you come like us? Why you did not come in your own form? That is your, you can say, supramental form." So she says, "If I did not come like you and experience the things that you experience, how could I ever tell you to become what I am?" So by being in the human form, they both laid the path, they showed us the way, what needs to be done, how one needs to undergo the trials and tribulations, and what is the best way, the best attitude to take when we are undergoing these situations. The Vedic rishis also knew about it, and they talked of the nights and the dawns. So basically, and sometimes the nights would be very long, and they were termed as long exiles from the light. And then after passing through nights and dawns, there comes a stage when both the night and the dawn, that means the highs and the lows, they nurture the soul. So there is often a reference in the Vedic text that nights and dawns both suckle the divine child, means both work towards raising the psychic to a higher level. So we have to go through it. And why? Because we are not one part, we are many parts put together. And there are parts in us which have not yet opened and they need to open. So we are a composite of many parts. One part opening doesn't mean that we have skyrocketed into yoga and reached these spiritual heights. So if we are into a yoga of withdrawal, then it's okay. You concentrate only on the divine. आप divine में ध्यान लगाइए, and that's all. You are not bothered about what's happening in the world. And in some of the mathas and you can say ashram, you will find that there is a particular pattern, a daily routine, you know. You get up, bathe, do puja, sit in meditation, then do all your activities with the sattvic rectitude, read scriptures, learn something new, work. So all this is very good. But still, it does not, if one is moving towards the integral yoga, it does not prepare you well enough. So the Gita talks of the yoga as being sarva karmani, means everything all together. Everything in us has to change. All the different parts of the being have to change, have to be ready and be ready to change. And since they are not ready all at once, so we also go down. We feel this pull. The parts which are in the dim and darkness, they also look forward to the light. So the part which has opened very beautifully, very nicely, actually it sheds the light on those parts. And these dim parts, they crave for that light. So they try to rise. Being least prepared to rise, they often blunder and they often fall back. But in those situations, what one needs to do, that is what the mother is telling. So often we will see that after an intense period of spiritual enlightenment or after an intense aspiration, period of aspiration, there is often a wailing which comes. Because now these parts which are lower, dim, dark, not ready to change, they are exerting their pull and push. The mother in the prayer writes, and the first part, one can look at the prayer in two ways. In the first part, she is describing this exceptional state and how she has lost it. Now she's back to square one. She's taken off gear. She says, after having hoped so much, after having believed that my outer being was at last to become an instrument adapted to thy purpose. She's come to Pondicherry. She has had experiences before that also. Once she came to Pondicherry. So she says, at last to become an instrument adapted to thy purpose, after feeling hopeful that I would be at last delivered from this obscure and cumbersome self, and self is in inverted commas, I feel I am as far from the goal as before. So back to square one. She's feeling that nothing has changed. I am still where I was. As ignorant, as egoistic I was before this great expectation. And the path stretches out once again, interminable across the fields of inconscience. The sublime door has closed again, and I find myself still on the threshold of the sanctuary without being able to enter within. So we feel that we have reached there, but yet there is a wailing, there is a blockage where we are not able to foresee anything, we are not able to see anything clearly, and we feel, and we are in that state where depression, or you can say anxiety, or restlessness is very much prominent. So she's gone through this, and she was hopeful that now everything will be nice, very nice, I'm on the right path. And so she's feeling once again, of course she has undergone some experience which is making her feel this. If nothing else, the prayer is a great lesson in humility. Such a candid and frank self-analysis, great lesson for all of us. We achieve a little and we harp, rave and rant about it so much. She has achieved so much, yet she is saying, I am still as egoistic. Imagine the mother saying that. The mother and Sri Aurobindo both have, both often when they talk to their disciples, they would often say that yes, they also underwent these kind of situations. In fact, one of the disciples of Sri Aurobindo had asked, and he had lamented about this state, that I am still. So Sri Aurobindo said, these stages will come. And he says to him also, there was one thing which was bothering him so much, and it took him 6 months to overcome that. So sometimes when you have been in a great aspiration, suddenly something happens, not necessarily inward, but something outward. Some situation may change, or something drastic may happen in your surroundings that would throw everything out of gear. And when we are in a state of intense aspiration, we often think that why is it that we are in this state of intense aspiration and nothing is happening? Nothing is coming. So you go on aspiring intensely, but yet the feeling that kuch ho to nahi raha hai, I'm going on aspiring. So the mother has explained it very beautifully. She says that when we are in a state of intense aspiration, there is a narrowing, there is a pointedness. You are rising higher, pinpointedly, and the direction is very clear, it's upward. But there is also a stress of aspiration. This creates some sort of stress of aspiration, and the wideness, when we are wide enough, when we are receptive enough, whatever has to come down, we are readily able to receive that also. So the mother says the reverse is also true. Sometimes we may not be in a state of intense aspiration. We are very dull, and outwardly life seems very dull and boring. Yet we start receiving a lot of things. Because of the intense aspiration, a wideness has come, a receptivity has come. So even when you are not aspiring intensely, it is the result of that aspiration that you are now able to, the certain parts in you have widened. And whatever has to be received by you, you receive it automatically. So yoga, we have to remember that it is not a straight line. And the mother, very interestingly, Aditya also sang, "Do aur do ka jod char kahan hota hai." So the mother has said something similar, like the straight line is not the shortest distance between 2 points. So she's of course talking about yoga. So you have to reclaim not only the heights, but also the abysses. And both of them, they underwent, and they shared all this very candidly with their disciples. And when they went, and a lot of them you can come across in their writings. Prayers and Meditations is of course a very beautiful book where the mother candidly talks about all these kinds of trials and tribulations. In fact, it is so interesting that you will see that this prayer, which has been written on April 20, a very similar experience she's sharing in May 18, after about a month, and the same thing. So it's very interesting. If you read the writings of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, automatically there is an opening which comes. And then, of course, even when you are in the state of heights, you are getting prepared to face the abysses. And the mother had done it so intensely. She had left heights of spiritual attainments, and she had plunged into the densest of darkness, and she did her work over there. Ever since she came to Pondicherry, she had constantly she did only this. So that those parts also open, and the world, the earth consciousness rises. Sri Aurobindo in Savitri, he writes something very beautiful, and it fits this prayer so much. He writes, "Even his godlike strength to rise must fall." And he gives a very good reason why. He says, otherwise the soul will realize the divine, but the other parts of the nature will remain unchanged, and the universe and the earth will not undergo the transformation. So that is why this, from a great height, the fall also has to come. And because it is an integral yoga, and life itself is integral, so this movement of yoga also has to be integral, leaving behind nothing. All parts have to be included, have to undergo this transformation. And until that happens, we cannot say that we are actually on the path of integral yoga. If life is integral, yoga is also integral. And that is why these ups and downs, there is a necessity for these. Another beautiful line from Savitri: his soul, mind, heart became a single sun. Only life's lower reaches remained dim. Again explaining this. And he describes something extremely beautiful in Savitri related to all this. He says, this too, the supreme diplomat can use. He makes our fall a means to a greater rise. He comes unseen to our darker parts, and hidden by the darkness does his work, till they too feel the need for light and change. So often in the prayers and meditations we see, and the mother is undergoing this stage, and Sri Aurobindo has written the Savitri much later. So she had already, attained to the supermind and everything that is required for integral yoga. Yet she too is undergoing these low phases, or where she feels that progress has stopped and everything is blank. And in the next part of the prayer, once she has narrated this experience and the state that she is in the next part of the prayer, she actually reveals the attitude that one needs to take whenever there is a period of inconscience dominating. What is the way out? She says, but I have learnt to look at everything with a smile and a tranquil heart. So the important thing is never to despair, never to lament, oh, I attained so much and I lost this, I feel guilty, I am least prepared, I have failed. So all these movements are actually contrary to yoga. They bring us further down. So yoga has to be done with a smiling and tranquil heart. One has to be happy doing the yoga. So lamenting, despair, despondency, and also they show a lack of trust. And here the mother is, as a human, she is undergoing this, and she's talking of the way as being that of trust, surrender to the divine, trust in the divine presence, trust that the divine will pull you out of everything. She says, I ask only this of thee, O my divine master, not to let me make any mistakes. So once you are in this despondent state, or once you are in this low phase, what can happen is that we start making further mistakes, and we commit the stupidest of, you can say, gross mistakes that one can make. Depression, boredom, then seeking pleasure from artificial sources, or worse still, substance abuse. So all these can easily penetrate once we are in these states. So she's saying, even in this state, don't let me make any mistake, O Lord. Even if the instrument, she says, even if the instrument is still condemned for a time to unconsciousness, even if I am supposed to stay in the inconscient or the unconsciousness, even if I have to stay there for a time to unconsciousness, grant that it may let itself be guided faithfully and docilely by thy divine law. What a powerful prayer. So she is praying that I may be imperfect, my Lord. Even in this imperfection, let this instrument, let my being be used according to your divine law. And more importantly, the instrument is in an imperfect state. O Lord, do not let it be misused by me, so that I do not go down further. She says, I bow to thee, O Lord, with a deep and pure devotion. Oh, be the sovereign master of all hearts. So, this is the way. You bow down to the Lord, nestle at His feet, and offer everything that is happening in life to His care. Surrender with whatever we have. She is not saying that become perfect first and then go to the Lord and say, Lord, I've become perfect now, use me. She is saying that with all our imperfections, all our so called bad habits, or whatever is there lacking in us, with whatever we have, we approach the divine, we call out to the divine, so that those parts which are not yet open, they too can receive the light. And what is impossible for the grace? What is impossible for the Lord? It is just that we have to turn. Turning to the divine itself is an upward movement. Calling out to the divine, talking to the divine, praying to the divine, keeping everything in front of the divine. At one point of time, the mother has also said that, tell me those things which you feel you can't tell me, and come to me as you are. So, very nicely and beautifully, even the parts which are seeking the light will receive the light. And then the next ascension is going to be a higher. But the next higher ascension does not mean that it stops there. Again, the same process is going to happen. And the greater the rise, the greater the fall. We have to be prepared for that. But then the Lord, with every ascension, is also preparing us for the fall, for the abysses. And how? Sometimes when you will look back at your life, maybe after 20 years or 30 years, we see what has happened. Right now, when we are facing the difficulty, we start lamenting, we are despondent, and we crib and we cry, why this is happening to me? But on hindsight, when the phase has passed and when we have, after few years, we see that yes, it was needed. There was a need for me to undergo this experience. Otherwise, I would not be ready for the next experience that has already come to me. So, it's a beautiful life. And the path is, of course, not straight. But there is a purpose in the path not being straight. If everything is straight, then there is nothing to be done, no? So, all these ups, they give us joy. The downs also, if we have the right attitude, we will face them with a smiling heart, and we will see that these abysses or these low moments also had a purpose in life. And the purpose was to push us higher on this path of yoga. So all life is, when Sri Aurobindo says all life is yoga, we cannot leave out anything, the smallest of the smallest and the biggest of the biggest. We cannot leave anything behind. Everything in life is important. Everything is seeking and craving for that transformation. And there is a possibility for every part to get transformed. And Sri Aurobindo and the mother, of course, they have given the assurance that the new creation is just around the corner. And of course, the mother and Sri Aurobindo underwent intense experiences. Intense, we cannot even imagine what kind of abysses or what kind of dark, inconscient states they traveled so that they could be transformed too. And they have given us the assurance, especially Sri Aurobindo. He put for us forward the mother. For everything, the mother is there. For even for the things you think she is not there, she is there. And he has always said, never hide anything from the mother. So all yogic sutras have been given to us in the prayers and meditations, in their conversations, in Savitri, and in everything they have written and talked about. So we are really in that state, we are in that stage where we are already in that fast forward stage. Now it is for us to, how fast can we make it? Even hurry takes time, no? Hurry, H-U-R-R-Y. Hari, of course, doesn't take time. The Supreme Hari doesn't. So we will read this prayer once more. I would also like to read out some portion of the prayer which I mentioned, May 18, where exactly she's narrating the similar thing, and in a more profound, in a more elaborate way rather. May 18, very interestingly she writes, "Here begins the difficulty, for everything depends upon the perfection of the various states of their being, and even after attaining the sublime identification, they must still work at perfecting the instrument which will manifest thy divine will." So there is no full stop anywhere. Even after attaining the perfection, there is yet another perfection that is awaiting. This is where the task becomes arduous. This is where it becomes difficult. Everything seems to me mediocre, insufficient, neutral, same words, different words but the same feeling. Insufficient, neutral, almost inert in the present instrument which thou makest me call myself. And the more I am united with thee, the more do I realize the mediocrity of its faculties and its manifestations. So the more you are moving upwards, the more you will also start becoming aware of these nooks and corners that need to change. So it all depends on linking yourself to the divine. And this link helps you to look inward, exactly where the work needs to be done. Interestingly, she uses a word, everything in it seems to me an incorrigible approximation. कहीं कुछ रुकता ही नहीं है. Almost as if it is a mandate, that ये तो होगा ही. And if that cannot disturb me in any way, it is because the true self is lying at thy feet or nestling in thy heart or conscious with thy eternal and immutable consciousness, and looks at the whole manifestation with a smile of patient and understanding benevolence. We will read the prayer on April 20 again. April 20, 1914. After having hoped so much, after having believed that my outer being was at last to become an instrument adapted to thy purpose, after feeling hopeful that I would be at last delivered from this obscure and cumbersome self, I feel I am as far from the goal as before, as ignorant, as egoistic as I was before this great expectation. And the path stretches out once again, interminable across the fields of inconscience. The sublime door has closed again, and I find myself still on the threshold of the sanctuary without being able to enter within. But I have learned to look at everything with a smile and a tranquil heart. I ask only this of thee, O my divine Master, not to let me make any mistakes, even if the instrument is still condemned for a time to unconsciousness. Grant that it may let itself be guided faithfully and docilely by thy divine law. I bow to thee, O Lord, with a deep and pure devotion. O, be the sovereign master of all hearts. If in simplicity we call out to the divine and just with complete trust, there is nothing that is impossible. In fact, there was a very profound line which Aditya sang. सोच समझ वालों को थोड़ी नादानी दे मौला. Why we think too much, and we are always looking for very complicated paths, this scripture, that scripture, this method, that method, this illumination, that illumination. But it is very simple. The simplicity of a child to nestle in the lap of the mother. In everything, remember the mother. And in everything, she will reveal herself.